All right. Good evening. We're here for another dope podcast chat, whatever you want to call it. Tonight we're gonna get serious though on them financials, because right now is a very pivotal time. Well, cash rules all the time, but especially right now, moving forward with you know, every day in the news we're hearing about crypto this, crypto that, and I've heard of crypto and I know a little bit, but I don't know a lot of it, right? So I needed to get some expertise, and I reached out to the good brother Algo Trader, and he's gonna, was nice enough to join our podcast tonight and give us some feedback and some reviews and some tidbits and some background searches on crypto, because the people need to know. Every day I'm reading trending, crypto's going up every day. It's at 18,000. Last week it was at 14,000. So it keeps going up, 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 up. And, we need to figure out what's going on with it. So without further ado, please introduce yourself, brother.
All right. Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here. My official name is Moeti Nubi. I go by Algo Trader because algo trading is what I do for a profession. I actually have been algorithmically trading for 8 years. And so I graduated from, I got a PhD in statistics from Florida State University. And my dissertation was specialized in commodity markets, where I basically built financial models. And so I was recruited by an up-and-coming energy company to come work as a quant. And, I was able to get a lot of exposure to building financial models in a Fortune 200 company, as well as just seeing like how the financial sector worked at a more, at a real life level. So while I was working there, I used to follow this blog, and then I remember, like, this is back in 2011. There, one of the blog posts basically was talking about this new cryptocurrency called Bitcoin. So I asked.
I'm sorry. Before you to interject, what are blogs? No,
yeah,
I'm joking.
Oh, yeah, that's way back in the day, man. The first, what's interesting? I'm part of that generation that like remembers pre-internet and post-internet. And so like a lot of that stuff that we were using, like they're like, what are we talking about? So I gotta remember that I was in the early days, we had to connect to the internet with the dial-up, you can only you had to choose, like you gotta talk on the phone or do the internet. You had to, make a choice.
You had to go into 7-Eleven and steal the AOL disc, go home,
there you go.
Yeah,
those things were everything. We were making like toys out of them and stuff, man. They don't know anything about that.
AOL disc were like cigarettes in prison. They were that popular.
Yeah,
like, it was insane.
It was very popular.
So all right, so finish up. My bad. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. What is it? Yeah. So basically, I just first discovered Bitcoin in 2011. After reading a blog post, and so I started doing some research online, and I ran into the Bitcoin white paper, and I read it, and I'm not saying I necessarily understood everything that was in it because it was a very technical paper, but I understood like the idea that they were trying to do. And one of the reasons I understood it was because they were talking about a peer-to-peer money. And I remember from, when people were doing file sharing, peer-to-peer, all these different things. So I kind of knew that doing a peer-to-peer network of something is always going to shake up the establishment. So I found it interesting. One interesting story that I told my boss about it at the time, and he said, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And at this time, there were all these unregulated exchanges, so he ended up purchasing about 800 Bitcoin for like $1,500. So I have no idea how much he's actually held on to, but I was also, I didn't have as much disposable income at the time, but I was actually participating in the early days of cryptocurrency. I was on the early site that people use for Bitcoin was called Bitcoin Talk. And that was where where the early adopters were kind of, congregating, and people were talking about the technology. And I wasn't necessarily sold at that point in time. I thought it was interesting. So I said, let me buy a few. I mean, they were on like a couple of bucks. My first Bitcoin I probably got for like $2.50. So, and then Yeah, so it was definitely. I mean, I wish I got more in hindsight, but I had opened up a. I was actually, and this is a little bit of history. I was the first penny auction website, maybe the first auction website in history to actually accept Bitcoin as
Oh wow.
payment.
Okay.
Yeah. We had me and my wife. We had a company called MonkeyMarket.com, and we decided, you know what, this is pretty cool. How about we allow people to accept or basically purchase with Bitcoin, and that would be a way to kind of like market our site. And so some of the early Bitcoiners actually used our site. I don't know if you're familiar with Roger Ver. He was a big name in the Bitcoin space, but he actually in the early days he used our site to kind of promote some of his things. So we were
And what
doing a lot of. Go ahead.
what year was that?
This is 2011.
Okay. Wow. Wow. So you was
Yeah.
way ahead of the game before it got all convoluted.
Yeah, I was definitely there in the early days. So I saw a lot of, I've seen the history of this thing kind of evolve from where people were thinking that it was a scam to now where it's basically in the mainstream and governments are talking about it. So, I kind of have a 9-year history dealing with Bitcoin. It's only been around for like 11 years.
Right. Right.
And I've seen the exchanges get hacked. All the new coins come about, and I was able to make some money in it. I kind of most of the what I did was I kind of funneled a lot of my profits into real estate. And but I always stayed up to date with the technology. So I really wanted to make sure that I understood the mathematics behind it because, again, like by profession, I'm a financial engineer. And so it's important at my level to make sure that we build the models that actually run forecasts for simulating stocks and commodities and things like that. So I wanted to understand, how does Bitcoin, this blockchain, work behind the hood? I know most people are just looking to just send money back and forth or make a profit, but we want to know what's the engineering behind it. So I was just consuming anything I could find online, taking courses. I had to relearn cryptography. And the more and more I learned, the more I realized, like, wow, this is actually, the most advanced mathematics that we have out here, and we're actually applying it in real life. And that's
Right.
something that I think was really, it's a bigger deal than what we really talk about because there's so much academic stuff out there that people are just solving problems that have no real use case. And so this is a problem that, money is a big problem. Everybody uses money, and
Who are
we're
you
trying to
telling?
figure out exactly. It's crazy. We don't even think about it. How money just permeates our lives, and I think that I just like the way that Bitcoin actually made us think about what money is, not just about chasing money, but what is it?
Yes. That's a
So yeah, and
no.
I
That
think
that's
that's kind of go ahead.
no. That's a really good point. We're taught in our society is like, whatever you do, you'll just get money, get money, get money. You got to pay for this. You got to pay for that. But we really don't really think about why or the what or the how. It's very topical the way we're taught about money, especially in our community. It's very just get it, get it, get it. Don't matter. Just get it, get it, get it. And there's a deeper uh background science to it. You know what I mean?
Yes, I absolutely agree. I mean, to me, money has become like this assumed thing that nobody questions, very similar to like how religious thought may have been, 1,500 years ago. Like, just read this, just
Mhm.
trust this, and a lot of times people have gotten out of that, just like blindly follow, this leader, but we do the same thing with money, and how does money actually get its value? Why should we value this money as opposed to this money? And but because when you don't question it, all you just say, well, just get this type of money. If it looks like this, if it's this color, go chase that. Do whatever you got to do to get it. You don't
Mm-hmm.
ask any questions. And so Bitcoin was really the first, I would say, global system that actually challenged people's idea. Like, well, maybe you should get some of this. And they're like, why? Because I can't process that because I don't know what that is. And as you don't know what money is, you wouldn't know whether to get something new or not. You just, because you only been taught one thing. So
Mm-hmm.
to me, it's very similar to like where sometimes people have to have a religious awakening from what they learned growing up. We have to have a monetary awakening from what we learned growing up, you
I love
know?
that. I
And that's
love that.
where I feel, yeah, and that's where kind of like what I'm trying to help people understand is like intuitively understand why that awakening is so important. Because if you don't understand it, you're going to get stuck in a box when everybody else is like moving to the next thing.
Mm-hmm. No, 1,000%. So let's kind of break this down on a very topical, like speaking like I'm 7 years old, right? Like I come to you and I say, all right, give me 5 things about Bitcoin that I should know about. Like, what is it? How does it work? Is it and I still actually think people think it's actual physical thing. I think people like if I was to, talk to my dad about this, and he's a very smart guy, he's a Wharton guy, but to
Mm-hmm.
him in his mind, it's still like I need to touch, I need to hold it. But he because he doesn't see that it's not something you touch. So kind of unpack it for me. Like what
Oh,
exactly is Bitcoin?
absolutely. So let's go to a very base level because we're going to really talk about what money is.
Okay.
And money is an accounting system, okay? It is an accounting system for how we measure value. Let's start there, okay? I don't care what money you're using, it is an accounting system. If we're using the US dollar, then if you have a big pile in your back, in your hand, and I have just one, then we're measuring something. Like you have more of something than I do. Okay, so it's just an accounting system. Now there are three accounting systems in modern in monetary theory that have ever existed. Like as far as in recent memory, and I'll talk about them briefly. The
Okay.
first one is kind of like the gold standard. Okay.
Okay.
Now the gold standard is a standard where you have gold, you give it to some bank, and the bank issues you a piece of paper like this, and it's like, okay, this paper right here, you can redeem this for your gold whenever you want. Okay.
Okay.
And so that means, so you walk around with that piece of paper and you say, hey, I'll give you this piece of paper, but trust me, you can go to the bank and get your gold and get my gold. So people use the paper as a claim on gold at the bank. And so that was initially one way to get people to value paper because they knew that the paper was redeemable for gold at a bank. And that was considered the gold standard.
Gold
So,
standard.
but again, that's an accounting system, right? Because the accounting system is based off of the gold at the bank. The bank keeps a ledger of who owns what, and it's ultimately based off an accounting system. The next standard is the fiat standard. So in the 70s, Richard Nixon basically said, you know what? We are going to get rid of the gold standard. You can no longer go into a bank and redeem and give them a dollar and get gold back. We're going to get rid of that. Okay. All we're going to do is trust us. The money is going to be worth something.
That's a
And
lot
that's what
coming
they
from
did. They
Richard
said,
Nixon, right?
there you go. And that's what he did. He said that don't trust us. You can no longer redeem it for gold, but we will ensure that we don't overprint the money, and you can still go and get bread, all these types of things, and everything else is going to work perfectly fine. And that's what we call the fiat standard. And again, you have an accounting system because people have, now you're just passing paper around, but you're still measuring things by how much paper somebody has.
Mm.
Now, let's look at the flaws in these systems, right? Is you have the gold standard, all these systems depend on trust. you have to, so in the gold standard, a lot of people are like, oh, we got to go back to the gold standard. Well, even in the gold standard, you have to trust bankers, right? Because as you give them your gold and you're like, I trust you to not do anything with my gold. Whenever I come in here, I want to be able to redeem my gold. A lot of times the bankers will have all this gold and they'll start doing their own things with it. Like, okay, well, see, they trust me. I'm gonna go do this right here and that. And next thing you know, the bank collapses. You like, you think you have gold in there, but you don't really, because you trusted the bank, right? And bankers don't have a history of deserving that trust. Okay, so that's the problem with the gold standard is trust. Second thing, governments. You got a fiat standard, right? You got to trust governments to not overprint the money, right? Well, several times in history, governments have overprinted the money. You look at Venezuela, Argentina, Zimbabwe,
crazy, right?
Hyperinflation, exactly. They just start overprinting the money. So you're trusting the government to keep something scarce, and then they basically abuse that trust. Okay. So these are problems with its only system that we had until 2008 when this crypto standard came about, where essentially what happened was that this anonymous figure, Satoshi Nakamoto, released a white paper online and said, you know what? We can create an accounting system that does not depend on trusting governments or banks. It's just an accounting system for measurement. So yes, it's digital, but the value is that you don't have to trust anybody except mathematics, which is the cryptography, and a demand for something that that is separate from the current system. So that's really where the value comes from. And this is what you have to, when people ask you, well, how does it have value? The value comes from the fact that people are looking for an alternative system of trust, because there's only two other alternatives: bankers and governments. And so there's a lot of people looking for an alternative system, and this is the only one for measuring value. And so that's kind of at a core level, that is essentially what Bitcoin is. It's an accounting system that does not depend on. So if I go a little bit deeper, it's not just doesn't depend on trust. There is no centralized authority who's managing the accounting system. And what that means is that there's not like, okay, there's no Bitcoin organization that has control of the accounting system and said, okay, well, if I send you money, then I'm going to change the ledger on the accounting system. The system is decentralized, very similar to when the file sharing networks first started, where with the Napster days, where nobody really controlled who had the songs on their computer. Everybody was sharing the song, so they couldn't shut the network down. That's exactly how this system works. Everybody is sharing the accounting ledger, and so it cannot be shut down. Now, how they ensure that the accounting ledger stays legit, because the biggest issue that you have is that you don't want anybody to spend money they don't have, double spend money, or take somebody else's money. These are big issues in any accounting system. And so this is where the mathematics comes in, where they use game theory and cryptography to create a scheme that ensures that if somebody tries to manipulate the ledger, that technically they can't, because it's so difficult to do. So that might be a little bit, and like, so ask me if you want me to clarify something or maybe go into more depth. I can go either way.
No, brother, it's clearly your shit. Like, it's clear. That's right. So I'm just trying to go over a couple notes here. So basically, we in our society, we've had two main accounting systems: the gold standard, and then the fiat, and that's FIAT, like the car.
FIAT, yes.
Okay. And so that's basically, we still have a fiat today. That's when I get cash out the ATM and this and that. And so a quick question: when I see crypto, like every morning, like boom, it's 14,000 on Monday, boom, 15,000 today, boom, 16,000. Do I have to? Okay, do I have to spend 16,000 to get one Bitcoin, or like how does it work? Like, let's say I don't want to spend that much. Let's say I want to put like half. I want to put 8 G's in. Can I buy a half a Bitcoin?
And you could buy 20 cents of a Bitcoin. You could buy $2 of a Bitcoin. It's really just a fraction. So let's say you like, you know what, it's worth $16 a Bitcoin today, but I only have 8,000. Well, you just buy zero point 0.5 of a Bitcoin. You just take the fraction and you purchase that. So, I think 0.001 Bitcoin might be worth $100 today. So,
Okay.
it's essentially and I can't remember how low the fraction goes, but you might be able to buy 0.0000001 Bitcoin, but there's like a certain limit. I think it might be 8 zeros, decimals that you can go out to. But I mean, essentially anybody can afford a fraction of a Bitcoin. Even today, like you may not be able to afford an entire Bitcoin, but it is very possible. Even if you have $5, you can get a portion of a Bitcoin.
Yeah, see, I think that's another thing. I think the math part of it scares people because, as you all know, math in our society is like the evil genius. You know what I mean? Like we all hated math, calculus, stats, whatever we had to take, we just dreaded it. And I think the math
Yeah,
part scares people. And I think when they see something like 14, 15,000, 16,000, they think I got to buy the whole 16,000 to get one Bitcoin. So that's thank you for clarifying that. Now, I had
yeah,
another
and let
question.
me challenge you on something really quick because I hear this a lot about math, right? And
Yes, sir.
see, I have a lot of mathematical training, and one thing I'll tell people is that the reason why most people are intimidated by mathematics is because of the teachers that they have. Okay. And the curriculum that we give people, because I guarantee you, most people, if they think about it, are a lot more mathematically trained than they actually think they are. And I'll explain it in 1 minute. Okay. Mathematics can simply be defined as definitions and arguments.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
At a very base, not numbers. See, this is where most people mistake themselves, where they think that mathematics is about numbers. No, that's arithmetic, or there's algebra. Okay, I'm talking about mathematics at a very core level is about two things: definitions, defining what you are talking about, and constructing an argument about your definitions. Okay, now we use dictionaries all the time,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Yes, sir.
And dictionaries have definitions in those. That's half of mathematics. If you talk about something, be able to define what you're talking about. And the next step is, if you ever been in a relationship, you have some arguments, okay? So you
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 ain't
know you
lying.
have experience. You have experience with that, okay? So as you put these two things together, this is really at a core level what mathematics is. And that's a whole nother topic, but I
Right.
guarantee you, I've had several conversations with people who told me they hate mathematics. And then when I start them on this level, and then I start showing them how they use mathematics, but they never thought about it, they're like, they're mind blown because they think it's something, obviously there's different levels to it.
Mm-hmm.
But just like music, okay, there are people who play classical pianist music, and there's no way that I can do what they do. But that does not mean that I can't be a musician,
Right.
right? And so
Mm-hmm.
there's mathematicians that do stuff that like I have no interest or anything. But that does not mean that you cannot be a mathematician, because at the very base level, it is definitions and arguments, and you get to determine where in the spectrum of mathematics you want to apply your abilities.
Wow. See that honestly, like, at 39, no one has really put it to me like that. Think about that. Like, and I've taken calculus, stats, and geometry, and at every level you can, but it's never been put to me like that. It's been put to me like, yo, just get an answer. Whatever you do, get an answer. Not
Yeah.
not how to form it and figure it out. That's deep, bro. That's actually powerful. You need to be like spreading that gospel for all the math, because from a young age, you're right. Math is it's very intimidating. It's yeah, and it follows us too,
Well,
right? Like
yeah, it becomes in our system that we are not good at mathematics. Look what, I'll give you an example. Look what we've done so far in this podcast, where you asked me, what is Bitcoin? And I gave you a definition, right? I said, Bitcoin is an accounting system, right?
right.
So I defined Bitcoin, right? Then notice how I constructed an argument. I said that there's a gold standard, a fiat standard, and a crypto standard. And I said, and these other standards depend on trust on bankers and governments, and this is the alternative. So I constructed an argument. I said, hey, this is the definition is an accounting system, and I had an argument. This is a system that does not depend on trusting these things. I did mathematics during this conversation right here, and you didn't get intimidated, did you?
No, I didn't. I didn't. You laid it out. You laid it out flat and very, precise. And it's like, anytime you're learning something, it's very exciting. That's why you see the smile on my face, because I'm learning something right now. You're teaching me, and we're vibing because you're teaching me stuff, and you're teaching all our listeners and everybody. So a quick question. So Bitcoin is like, for a lack of better words, the gold standard of crypto. Can we say that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's the first mover. Yep.
Okay. So what about these other cryptos I've heard? Like, I don't know if you heard the singer Akon. He came out with the crypto, and I'm seeing other cryptos. What is the difference between Bitcoin and these other cryptos?
Okay, so and here goes another history. I kind of seen all this stuff happen, and it's kind of hard to really because there's thousands of them now. But what I will say is that I'll try to say here goes some of the big differences between the different cryptos. So Bitcoin, its biggest advantage is that it was just first. I actually think a lot of people in this space feel like Bitcoin that does not do a lot of stuff. It's almost like a calculator when there are computers now. But again, the calculator is out there and it's the most popular one. And so the calculator is just continuing to do what it does. Now, another major one that I think is the number two is Ethereum. Okay. Now, what Ethereum did, which is they were actually trying to do this on the Bitcoin network, but the people who were programming Bitcoin were not interested in changing the code. So the founder of Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin, what he realized is that the accounting system that runs Bitcoin can actually be generalized into a computer. Okay, so think about a Microsoft computer. What he realized is that, hey, Bitcoin just said, hey, we can actually do one thing. We can move wealth as an accounting system with this, with this network. And he said, we can not only just move wealth, we can actually write computer programs on this machine and have computers all over the globe validate the processing of the computer. And so Ethereum is essentially like a global computer that also, but in order to run the computer, you need something called gas, which is this underlying currency called Ether. So if I build a computer program on Ethereum, then I have to pay a little bit of gas in order to use the network. And anybody who uses my computer program have to pay a little bit of gas to use the network. So they created like an intrinsic value for their cryptocurrency. So imagine it like as you go to an amusement park, and in order to get on any rides, you need some tickets. And so those tickets automatically have value because that's what you have to use to be in the playground or into the, in that arena. So that's similar to how Ethereum built their network, where they built They said, look, this is a global computer, but in order to use the computer, you need our Ethereum as gas, and therefore they kind of bootstrap a intrinsic value beyond just an accounting system. So,
Okay.
and there's been a lot of cryptocurrencies that have actually done a similar thing. And so another innovation is, let's say there was a cryptocurrency called Monero. And so in the early days of cryptocurrency, it was assumed that, it was anonymous, that you could send money and nobody could figure out who you were. Well, it's not technically true. If somebody really, like the FBI, if they really want to figure out who you are with Bitcoin, is is not that difficult. You might need to have like a team of researchers, but they can figure out who you are. They can figure out how much money you have, all these types of things. Now, Monero, which is another cryptocurrency, they realized that Bitcoin is private, but it's not as private as we can make it. So Monero made a blockchain or accounting system very similar to Bitcoin, except they increased the cryptography on it so that it is really, really difficult to determine who is sending money back and forth, how much money you have. They made it very, very difficult. So that's what I would call a remix. All these things, a lot of them are just remixes of the original. But some of them are actually. Go ahead.
So Bitcoin is the original, and everyone's kind of riffing off of that.
Yeah, everybody now there have been some, I would say that a lot of them are just remixing off of them, but some of them are really doing some completely groundbreaking different things. So I'll say one of the big groundbreaking things is there's a divide between proof of work networks and proof of stake. Okay, so Bitcoin runs on something called proof of work, and simply put, proof of work is just to make sure that the accounting ledger is not manipulated or scammed. And you may have heard of like Bitcoin mining, where like people buy these massive rigs. So what they're doing, they're really acting as like a processor for the network, ensuring that nobody can scam it and you can earn money from doing this. But the problem with this method is that, one, it uses a lot of energy, and people don't like to talk about this, but the Bitcoin network, I mean, they're consuming more energy than than Iceland, the entire country of Iceland. Yeah, it's a lot of energy that's being used to keep the Bitcoin network running, and it's more and more power consumption being used every year. So this has always been one of these things that's kind of in the back of people's mind. What are we going to do to ensure that we can, have like an energy efficient network? Well, the alternative system is something called proof of stake. And proof of stake, I would say one way to look at proof of stake is, imagine if we so everybody knows that we have some money printer for US dollars or $20 bills in the United States. It's somewhere. I don't know where it's at, but somebody's printing that money. Now,
right.
The question is, now let's say you had a choice between allowing, some guy on the street corner to have control over that machine, or Bill Gates. Who do you think is going to be more honest with the with the system?
Mr. Gates.
Exactly. But the reason is not about good or bad. It just has to do with that Bill Gates has so much money that if he starts printing too much money, his own wealth is going to get messed up.
Right.
So he has a selfish. Exactly. So he has a stake in the US dollar to ensure that he is an honest player with the US dollar. Now the guy, who he don't have no money, he's like, shit, I'm gonna print all I can. He don't have nothing anyway. He had nothing to lose. Nothing to lose. So it's not even about who's a better person. It's just like, if you don't have a stake, you don't care. You're just trying to get as much as you can. So that's the theory behind proof of stake networks, where they say, hey, if you have a stake in our cryptocurrency, we will allow you to have a little bit of power over the ledger, like of the accounting ledger. But obviously, if you mess with the ledger, then you're going to mess up with your own money.
Right.
So the advantage of this system is that you don't have to deal with the computer power, where you have miners who are verifying the network. You just have people who are putting up their own virtual currency, and so it's considered more energy efficient.
You know,
So yeah.
that's interesting. Like it all comes down to energy efficiency and like you said, more energy than Iceland. That's crazy when you really think about it. Like that's insane, right?
Yeah.
So, like sort of kind of wrapping up a little bit because I know you're short for time, and like I said, I want to thank you so much for dropping knowledge. I wasn't even expecting to get a math lesson. You know what I mean? But now my brain is spinning, right? So,
Yeah.
two things I want to go over. When I hear the word blockchain, unpack that for me because I kind of know, but it's a very abstract type of idea that I think goes over to a lot of
Yes.
people's heads. So, kind of unpack what a blockchain is exactly.
Okay. And I probably should have connected these two ideas earlier, but the blockchain really is the accounting system.
Okay.
Okay. It is, you can think of the blockchain as think of a ledger that an accountant has that's taking notes of who owes what to who. That is what the blockchain is. Now, and then every 10 minutes, there are new transactions that are occurring, and then that essentially that accounting ledger gets updated. So what the blockchain is it's just a method for how do you update the ledger. Now, this is a little bit complicated, and I'm going to see if I can, what's the easiest way I can kind of explain this, because without getting into too much
Please
detail.
dummy it down for us.
I'm gonna try because, and again, I'll be honest about there are some things that I don't want to overcomplicate this topic. So let me know if I am. But essentially, there's something in computer science called a hash. Okay, and and a hash is basically that it's a way of ensuring that somebody has not tampered with with a ledger. So that if somebody, so let's say that you wrote like let's say the U.S. Constitution, okay? Let's say we take a hash of the U.S. Constitution, and the hash will give you like a number like ABC 123. Now, if you change even one word on the U.S. Constitution, let's say you get rid of like a capital B, you put it to a little b, the hash will change. If you change anything, it doesn't matter how small you think it is, and you take a hash of the Constitution, that you will see a very clear difference. So a hash is used in computer science as a way to like ensure that if anybody tampers with the system, doesn't matter how small, they try to make a small little, I mean, just think about it like in your room, like, you're like, you want to make sure nobody is like in your apartment while you're gone. Okay. And imagine there's a system that like, if somebody, they try to walk in there, they try to make sure everything's like in place, but they just touch one, they move like a pillow, like 1 inch. And if you took a hash of your apartment, you would be able to tell like, yeah, somebody was in here. Somebody moved, it don't matter how small. That's that's the computer analogy of what's going on with the blockchain, is that it once the accounting, so every 10 minutes it basically updates the accounting system. It computes a hash to ensure that nobody can ever change it without us knowing. And then it basically starts doing a whole nother accounting, and then it adds it takes that original hash and it adds another hash to that. And so it's kind of like you're just keep on adding blocks, but every block is hashed. So but you know exactly what that small number is, and then that it cannot be altered without somebody realizing.
So every block or hash, if you will, is a extra layer of security, if you will.
Yeah, well, I would say every block is basically, I would say a block is something that happens over a 10-minute interval of time on Bitcoin. So every 10 minutes, a new block of transactions is added to the ledger. Okay. And so you can say like it's called a blockchain because they're all connected. So let's think about this. So like, 10 minutes happens. Let's say there's 50 transactions that occur. The ledger writes down 50 transactions, computes a hash of that transaction and adds it to the network. Then another 10 minutes occur. Let's say 75 transactions occur. It adds, it writes all those down, computes a hash, and then adds that to the prior block. And so it's kind of like a chain where, you have a bunch of blocks and you're just connecting them like a chain and just, but the way it's being done is to ensure that nobody can tamper with what's happened in the past. And, this is a very complicated topic. And what I would recommend is that if somebody really wants to get into the nuts and bolts, there's actually some very good YouTube videos that kind of graphically show you this now. And there's one, I think it's like 22 minutes long, where I think you Google like, what is blockchain? And even as you watch the video, you still have to kind of write it out because it's not a very simple, it's not a simple process. Like even me, when I'm trying to, I'll learn it, but then you have to go back and like just remember how it works. That's how complicated it is.
No, that's like you said, I'm just thinking like a block and then a chain, but I get the logic of it. Like I said, I'm gonna take a look at that YouTube clip and trying to figure it out, the background of it. One last thing before we get out of here. Bitcoin's at 18,000, right? This morning or something like that. 2 years from now, right? Where do you see it? What is the next frontier on Bitcoin? Is it going to become more mainstream as it already? Because right now it's mainstream in name, but I don't know if a lot of normal, regular people are investing in it. So where do you see it in 2 years?
Well, this is an interesting question because personally, I like you said, and you made a very good point. There's the challenge with Bitcoin is that a lot of people only see it as a speculation vehicle. It's oh well, the price is going to go to 50,000. The price is going to go to 500,000. Possibly, I can't tell you the future, but what I can tell you is what you just said is that is not something that the average person is looking at. They're like, what can this thing do for me in my personal life? And so what I've been looking at is I think in the next 2 years, what's going to become more mainstream and may even become more mainstream than Bitcoin itself is the idea of a stable coin. And yes. And this is actually where, I'm looking at right now, which, that might be a whole nother conversation, but a stable coin is essentially uses the same technology as Bitcoin, except there's no volatility, which means that the price does not go up and down. So if you put $100 into a stable coin, then tomorrow is worth $100. The benefit is that nobody can stop your transaction. So you can move money anywhere in the world. It can't be shut down by bankers and governments, all the same properties, but there's no volatility. So why is this so important? Because everybody uses banks, okay? And this is one of the big issues I always hear. I even saw like what's the guy, Killer Mike talking about, we need black-owned banks, black-owned banks. I was like, well, one of the problems with banks is that they are very, especially if you don't have a lot of money, they actually charge you, to deposit money. You can't get good interest rates, all these different things. And so what I find fascinating about the stablecoin space is that there are stablecoins right now that are you can open a bank with in minutes. You can deposit money into them, and they're paying 8% APR. Okay, wow. You can't even get anywhere close to 8% APR in the traditional banking system. And you can open a bank account with $20, pay no monthly maintenance fees, and you're getting the returns that billionaires can't even get. Yeah. And so where I see the space of going in 2 years is that I'm looking at things that I can connect with the 99% because I believe in Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin was a necessary vehicle to like show people the potential of this of this technology, but I'm focused on what is going to be something that of value to people like me. People like, look, I'm just trying to save for retirement. I got a job. I'm trying to make sure that I can open a bank, store my money. I'm not trying to pay all these high fees. And this technology is something that I feel like is really going to connect to people like us. It's still very complicated to use, but I'm actually working on projects that we're trying to simplify this technology, and I'm trying to educate people on how to use this technology. But I think in 2 years, you are probably going to hear a lot more conversation about stable coins. And it may even be on the level of Bitcoin because, again, stable coins is about the banks. Bitcoin is about wealth. It's about, hey, how do you transfer wealth? Stable coin is literally going to be about, bank accounts. How do you bring that to people? And I think that's something that's going to, because, as you have a bank account, this is something that you have to consider.
I love it. I love it. So are there any stable coins out right now?
Yes, and the one that that I am actually personally interested in, and I can explain why, is there is a blockchain called Waves, and
Waves.
last year, yes,
Like
Waves,
waves, like
and
when you brush your hair, you get
yeah, just like
waves.
the Waves, yeah, you used to have the Waves back in the day, just like just Waves.
All right.
Um, the funny thing is, I had actually, I just discovered this by random chance because I knew about this coin for a while, but when I read their paper on their stable coin, I was actually surprised because they basically said, look, earn 10 to 15% APR with our stable coin. Now, when anybody tells me 10 to 15%, I immediately think scam. Okay, I think
Right,
Ponzi
right.
scheme, scam, because I've been in finance forever. Like I've seen all types of stuff. I'm like, look, I don't. They can't, sell me on that. So, but I read their paper, and this thing is designed by physicists. And I'm reading it, I'm like, this actually, the way what's interesting about it is that just how we talked about how people don't think about money, how often do we think about interest itself? The very idea of an interest rate. And this product made me think about what interest actually is. And so what they have done is that they figured out a way to stabilize, again, a cryptocurrency, but also pay interest to people who are using the cryptocurrency. But it's completely different from how the traditional system works. So as you think about a traditional bank, a bank essentially borrows our money and lends it out. They
Yep.
borrow to lend. They say, hey, let me give you your money. I'm gonna lend it out to somebody else. I'm gonna collect some interest, and I might give you some of it. That's all this digital banking works. How this system works is that they tell you, hey, give us your cryptocurrency, and we will give you a stable coin, which essentially like replicates the US dollar. And the cryptocurrency that you give us, we are going to stake it on this network. So remember we talked about proof of stake? This is, they basically said, we're going to stake that cryptocurrency so we're going to be able to generate money very similar to Bitcoin mining. And all that revenue that we generate from your cryptocurrency, we're going to allow you to, we'll basically pay that to you in interest. So, you have it's a completely different concept. And the way they actually ensure the system maintains itself is very interesting. Now, this is I would say, again, this is a new product. It's a lot of uncharted territory, but I'm extremely excited because if this product succeeds, then it's going to change the banking like we've never seen. I mean, and I feel like there is so many. I feel like there's a lot of opportunities that just don't reach our community where we don't know about banking products or investment products. And this product allows you to control the investment yourself. You don't have to give your money to anybody else. It's just, you can just, as long as you learn the steps, you can do them yourself. It's almost like being a car mechanic. Once you learn how to change your oil, you can do it yourself and you can do it whenever you want. And so I think in the next couple of years, that is kind of where I'm more excited about that than I am about Bitcoin. But I do feel that Bitcoin is going to do well. But what I've been telling people, I said, look, you got to be looking at what's that next thing that people don't know about right now, that only the 1% know about, and eventually everybody else is going to be talking about. And in my mind, I think stablecoin is going to be that thing that, we need to be paying attention to now. And not forget about Bitcoin, but that technology is going to be huge.
I love it. I love it. See, always dropping dimes, man. I love it, man. Bro, like, listen, this conversation, we got to do like part 2, part 3, because it's a lot more to it.
Yeah.
You're just like a sage. Your knowledge, your knowledge and your ability to kind of lay out the knowledge. See, a lot of people are smart, but they don't know how to lay it out, and they can't deliver that message. You know what I mean? And what I like about you is you're extremely bright, sharp. That's clear and obvious, but you know how to lay it out, and you know how to not go over top with it. And it's brilliant, and it's
well, I'm gonna tell you one problem that I noticed, about again, like you can be so educated you can't even teach anymore, and that's one of the problems that I have a problem with academia in general, because I come from a long lineage of teachers, believe it or not. I'm talking about every level, from college professors, elementary school teachers, kindergarten teachers. Like, I mean, I can trace my lineage of education back 800 years. It's a long lineage, and so now I kind of went away from the university model. I actually just went out and just got a job. But I think it's so important as I got older and I started seeing the political climate, how people are talking about topics and stuff like that. And I realized, like, where are the teachers that are out here in the streets talking to people? And what frustrates me so much is also how a lot of times people are trying to make people feel dumb for not understanding. And a teacher, that is absolutely against, to me, the core principle of teaching is that if somebody does not get something, it is not that person's fault. You got to figure out how to be a better teacher, okay? And so you always, as a teacher, in order to get better, you always have to put the pressure on yourself. And it can be frustrating sometimes, because sometimes I'm trying to explain something, it's like, I'm like, man, they're not getting it, but I never take it out on the person. What I tell myself, like, they're not getting it because you're not explaining it well enough. And so by doing it that way, because I don't want anybody to ever feel dumb or less than, or somehow they're intellectually lacking. That, to me, that is like terrible teaching. And we gotta get away from that, because people are talented in different areas. There's something that way more of than I don't know anything. You can teach me all day. And so we just have different skills, and we can appreciate what everybody brings to the table. And then we can, it creates a genuine environment. Well, hey, a student can learn knowing that their teacher is not looking at them like, man, this dude, they don't know nothing. And the teacher can actually improve teaching. And so that's kind of like the energy that you probably see from how I come from, because I come from a very a genuine place of trying to communicate, and figuring out how do I could communicate better. And I'm never going to be exactly, where I need to be, but I'm always going to keep on improving. And, hey, and if you recognize some of that, then great. I'm learning, because they say, well, one teaches, two learn.
Yeah, right. No, I could tell. It's your delivery, your flow. It's inviting. It's knowledgeable. It's awesome, and it's really. I'm blessed to actually, that you carved out some time and dropped some knowledge for us. I really appreciate it. Is there anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Oh man, well, I guess I kind of plugged at the very end was the I would recommend everybody look into the Waves platform. That is, if there's anything that I am personally looking at myself, is the Waves platform, and there's a stablecoin USDN, which you can earn interest on it. I actually created a YouTube video which kind of walks you through the techniques on how to do it. And this is just something that, these are things I kind of do just to kind of simplify processes. I can email you a brochure that I kind of put together on it. And then all this stuff is free. So it's not like there's no, oh, you got to pay me something. It's like, I'm trying to get the information out there because, I'm working on some projects that will eventually hopefully promote this thing on a mass level. But definitely look at that platform Waves in a stablecoin USDN.
All right, awesome, brother. Thank you so much, man. We definitely we got to do part 2, part 3. Where we can, just kind of go deeper dive into some other financial news issues moving forward with some stuff. But thank you so much for your time tonight. Really appreciate it. The knowledge you dropped was supreme. So really appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much, and you have a peaceful night.
All right, I appreciate it, man. I'm glad you had me on, man. We talk about math, politics, philosophy, religion, everything, man. You just let me know, man. I'll be talking about everything.
No doubt, no doubt. All right, brother. Peace.
All right, take care, man.